Our next speakers are going to be Alina and Sara from TU Darmstadt.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Oh, now it's working.
Okay. It took a while to wake up, right? Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Good morning. So my name is Alina, and this is Sara. We are both from Technical University of Darmstadt, and today we would like to talk about how users imagine their personal privacy assistant. So we all know that users struggle to protect their personal data, and also many state that they have no control over their privacy or their privacy settings. And one approach to support users here is a so-called privacy assistant or personal privacy assistant. And such a privacy assistant or PPA we understand as a digital representative who knows the preferences of the users, informs them about privacy violations, and also supports with decisions. And there are several approaches for PPAs in form of concepts, prototypes, or even real-world systems. And recent approaches often interviewed the users at the end of a development process, or they focused on one certain aspect of a PPA. And our approach was to build on this previous research and to follow a holistic user-centered approach to better understand how do users imagine their personal privacy assistant and do users differ in their preferences. So the first step to answer our research question was a literature review, and where we've, in the first step, searched for personal privacy assistant approaches, and then in the second step, analyzed the literature regarding the key aspects that should be considered in a design of a PPA. And we derived 5 aspects to consider when designing a PPA. The first one is, what features should the PPA have? The second is, how should the PPA learn the user's preferences? Then what level of user involvement should the PPA have? Which vendor should offer the PPA? And what data are users willing to disclose to their PPA? And these 5 aspects served as a basis for our second step, where we conducted 2 user studies. So we started with interactive interviews to gain a deeper insight into how participants design their PPA, and then followed up with a survey. And in both studies, we asked participants to create their PPA for the mobile app permission context. So participants went through 5 stations covering the 5 aspects we have derived previously from the literature. And to stimulate the creativity of the participants, we used different methods from the user-centered design in each of the 5 stations. So just to give you an example how these stations look like, in the first station we asked participants to determine which features they wished in their PPA, and to do this they were first shown a series of possible features, and here are just a few examples from which participants could choose. We then gave them a card sorting task where we asked participants to assign the displayed features to one of the 3 categories. So we asked them which feature should the PPA have, and please assign the features you see here to one of the categories. So I would definitely like to have this feature, or it is nice to have, or I don't need this feature. So the results of station 1 show that the features the participants like the best are the notification about apps that restrict their privacy, and also supporting with setting their configuration. On the other hand, aspects like gamification or praise were aspects or features the most participants did not need. In the second station, we used multiple choice questions to find out how the participants would like their PPA to learn their preference. And here it became clear that most of them would like to have this in a form of a questionnaire. Interestingly, automatic preference learning was preferred least often from the participants. In the third station, we asked the participants how involved they would like to be in the PPA's decisions. And here we asked participants to set a slider between 0, like no automation, I want to be involved in every decision, up to 100, the PPA should make all decisions fully automated. And here I would like you to invite to think about a number where you would set the slider. And maybe you want to raise your hand once who has a number below 50 and who has a number above 50. Oh, it seems quite more. So let's see what participants said. Actually, we could see we had like kind of two groups here. And we also asked in the interviews what conditions must be met for acceptance of automation, and one main factor was actually trust. In our evaluation, we took another closer look at these two groups we identified in terms of involvement, and we could see there were actually significant difference between the two groups. So while people with the preference of low or no automation, people were more likely to be middle-aged, tech-savvy, and privacy-concerned, also motivated to protect their privacy with having usually few apps installed. On the other hand, people who wished for more automation in their PPA were people who are younger or older, more to be like lay users, who are less privacy concerned and less motivated to protect their privacy with many apps installed. Okay, I hand over.
Okay, I hope this works. It doesn't work now. Yeah? Okay. So concerning the vendor of the PPA, the results of our survey show that the participants most frequently chose a national hacker association called the Chaos Computer Club, followed by a German university as a vendor. On the other hand, companies like Huawei or Facebook weren't chosen that likely or that often. So when we have a look at the results of the interviews, we can see that the main decision criteria were trustworthiness and competence, and the factors influencing trust were diverse and ranged from a personal connection to the vendor to the business model of the vendor. Then we asked our participants what data they're willing to disclose. And also here the results of the survey show that the participants were most willing to disclose data concerning the purpose for which they want to use the PPA, but they were less willing to disclose information from their online social media account. So the results of the interview give information about why users do not want to disclose data. So they express a fear of data misuse and also a general desire for data economy. They didn't see any added value of the PPA or did not want to connect services, or they doubted the trustworthiness of the vendor. So how do users imagine their PPA? As the main features, they want the PPA to set privacy preferences for them and to notify them about privacy-infringing app access. In addition, they want the PPA to learn their privacy preferences through questions. And they would like a medium to lower level of involvement. So concerning the data disclosure, they want to be the PPA to be data sparse itself, and the vendor should be a national hacker association. So do users differ in their preferences? Yes, they do. Our results show, so in our results we could see that there are two user groups with different demographics and privacy preferences. So tech-savvy people want to be more involved in the decisions of the PPA than lay users. From our results, we derived a design space that accounts for 7 psychological needs. To give you a quick examples. So competence describes the feeling of being capable and effective. A PPA could address this, for example, by acting as a learning companion for interested users and thereby considering different levels of expertise. Autonomy is another important psychological need and describes the feeling of living according to one's own ideas. And here, the PPA could address this, for example, by making privacy settings across applications to allow users to manage their data according to their preferences. So in our study, we focused on the use case of mobile app permissions, had German participants, and could only conduct certain statistical analysis of the data. Therefore, for future work, we recommend to use standardized methods and scales in order to perform more in-depth data analysis, to recruit a larger, more heterogeneous sample, and in addition, we would recommend to investigate other contexts like the web. Yeah, so thank you for your attention, and we are now happy to take your questions.
All right, thanks so much, Alina and Sara. We have a couple of questions already, and the first one from Christine is, so in your first step that you talked about, you showed people, you gave them the existing features that they could choose from the privacy assistants and asked which ones they prefer. Can you talk about the design choice of having that in a study where kind of you constrain their choices by letting them choose rather than making it completely open-ended? Like, was there prior work? How did you formulate that?
Yeah. The first idea was like we started with the interview study where we actually asked people to come into the laboratory and design their PPA. And our first idea was to just give them like a blank sheet and to give them the task to design their PPA. But then we realized that this would be a super hard task for people who are not really like familiar with this kind of study. Or this kind of study, and we actually wanted to include the right range of people, also older people, people who are not familiar with doing studies. So therefore, we decided to derive design choices from literature that had been proposed in literature before, but we also gave participants the choice to design an own feature or use a blank feature. But actually, none of the participants chose this option.
Thank you. So our next question is from Carl, who says that in your study, participants mentioned that they want notifications but not gamification. But there's also been literature where people are tired of privacy notices, but they're okay with gamification. And can you talk about this mismatch and what you think may be happening?
Yeah. So we also asked participants in the interviews, like, what's your idea of the privacy assistant? And people often say it's more like a serious thing. I need this as a support mechanism I can trust. And gamification is just like a fun thing, but here it needs to be like practical. And usually I don't want to be like disturbed. But I think there is a small group who is really into this gamification aspect. I mean, you can see most people say, I don't need gamification or praise, but there is a group who is into gamification, and this may be one certain interesting group to look at again.
Thank you. And one more question from Thorsten. On the slide that you previously had up, in step 4, this vendor checkboxes. So in your example, actually the one next one, the one you had with the different data processors, with like Facebook, the toggle, Facebook, Google, and others.
Wait, which one?
Maybe, yes, this one.
Yeah.
Step 4, you says, I'd like to have automatic settings for Facebook, Twitter, and so on. So how does this work with services? So would you imagine that every data processor would have that? And if there are many, many data processors, how would that work?
Yeah, this is like the question about like the technical implementations, like how could such a privacy assistant work like in a real world system? Or
I guess maybe just the fact that there's so many of them, not just that you're able to find them, but how do you display all this information and keep it manageable?
one aspect, so we just like here put all into one list actually, but this could be like really like overwhelming for users. But what users actually said, if I start like putting my preferences in and I gain kind of trust in the PPA and trust the PPA that the PPA can make decisions for me, then after like learning my preference after a while, I would also allow them to actually do do settings for me. So they may just start with like the most important, or would like process most of the important data, and then the rest would be like kind of an automated thing then to not overwhelm the users here.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think in the interest of time, we'll end there, but thanks so much, Alina and Sara, for your talk.
Thank you.